Myself Dr. Alji Varia. Today's online lecture is on competency number PA 6.1, that is define and describe edema, various types of edema, pathogenesis and clinical correlations. Specific learning objective for today's lecture. One is define edema, enlist its type and describe pathogenesis of edema in general. Then second one is differentiate between transudate and exudate. So whenever there is fluid accumulations, especially in a serous cavity, we sometimes do aspirations of this fluid for diagnostic purpose as well as for therapeutic purpose, whether this fluid is transudative in nature or exudative in nature. And what is difference between transudate and exudates. Third learning objective is enumerate and describe in brief etiology and clinical significance of common types of edema, that is cardiac edema, pulmonary edema, renal edema and cerebral edema. Coming to edema definitions, the term edema comes from the Greek word, that is edema means swelling. So in edema there is usually swelling. Exact definitions of edema: it is an abnormal and excessive accumulations of fluid in the interstitial tissue space as well as in serous cavities of body. So here abnormal and excessive accumulations of fluid either in interstitial space, that means space present in between cells. Various connective tissue spaces in between cells is known as interstitial space. And various serous cavity, like pleural cavity, pericardial cavity, peritoneal cavity, etc. This edema, it occurs as a result of imbalance between the forces that keep fluid in the vessels and the forces that promote its exit into the interstitial space. So normally there is balance between two type of forces. One causes fluid that within the vessel walls, other causes exit of fluid into interstitial space. Normally this balance is maintained, but if there is imbalance, then there is development of edema. In different body cavities, edema corresponding to, like in peritoneal cavity, edema is called hydroperitoneum. Common terms is ascites. If edema fluid accumulate in pleural cavity, it is called hydrothorax. Common term here is pleural effusions. And if edema fluid accumulate in pericardial cavity, it is called hydropericardium or pericardial effusions. Then there is one term, anasarca. Anasarca is usually severe generalized edema with profound subcutaneous swelling. So whenever there is severe generalized edema, it is called anasarca. Coming to classifications of edema, there are various kind of classifications. One type of classifications is depend on the site of edema fluid accumulations. So edema is divided into three types: localized, generalized and facial type of edema, that means specific organs is involved. Example of localized edema: various inflammatory edema, lymphatic obstructions and lymphatic edema. Some types, some toxic or allergic conditions also causes localized edema within an organ or within a part of tissue. Generalized edema, examples are renal edema, cardiac edema, nutritional edema. So in generalized edema, there is accumulations of fluid in a systemic as well as in a subcutaneous tissue. Special type of edema, particular organs is involved, like pulmonary edema involving lung tissue and cerebral edema involving brain tissue. Second type of classifications of edema, pitting edema and non-pitting edema. Pitting edema means in subcutaneous tissue, the edema fluid rises free in the interstitial space and can be displaced from one place to the other by momentary pressures of finger. And due to this pressure, there is productions of depressions. This depressions is called pitting. Non-pitting edema, it is solid. Here no displacement of fluid, that's why no pitting occurs on pressures. Example of non-pitting edema, elephantiasis and myxedema. This one is typical example of pitting edema. Whenever we apply pressure by fingers, there is development of depressions. That is called pitting. Third type of classifications depending on the nature of fluid. As I told you, two types of fluid, transudate and exudates. Edema occurring in a hydrodynamic derangement. There is transudate fluid accumulations. If edema occurs in inflammatory conditions, there is exudate nature of fluid. Hydrodynamic derangement produce transudate, inflammatory conditions produce exudate. Difference between transudate and exudates. Definitions. Transudate, blood plasma filtrate. So here fluid is clear. It is just filtrations of plasma. Here there is no changes in endothelial permeability or vascular permeability is intact in case of transudate. Exudate, edema occurs in inflamed tissue. Here there is increased vascular permeability. Natures, non-inflammatory and inflammatory. Specific gravity, transudate less than 1.015, exudate more than 1.018. Cells, whenever we aspirate this fluid, especially from serous cavity of body, cells present in case of transudate are few in numbers and mainly mesothelial cells. These mesothelial cells are lining cells of serous cavity. While exudate, this exudate is inflammatory in nature. So here many number of cells are present and these cells are inflammatory in nature. Sometimes there may be presence of parenchymal cells because there is inflammatory process. Protein content in case of transudate, raw protein contains less than 1 gram per deciliter of fluid and mainly this protein is albumin, very raw amount of fibrinogens. Exudates, high protein contents 2.5 to 3.5 gram per deciliter. Here there is high amount of fibrinogens because in inflammations there is tissue degradations. So high amount of fibrinogens is present in inflammatory fluid accumulations. pH of transudate, usually it is alkaline more than 7.3 and exudate it is acidic. As in exudate there is inflammatory process. That's why there is excessive cell degradations or cell lysis. So usually intracellularly there is acidic pH, extracellularly there is alkaline pH. So whenever there is cell lysis and whenever fluid accumulate, there is intracellular contents comes into extracellular phases. That's why here pH of fluid decrease in case of exudates. Glucose contents, transudate same as plasma, while exudate raw glucose contents, that means less than plasma glucose levels. Same mechanisms due to inflammations and usually inflammations occur due to various organisms. These organisms consumes glucose. That's why in case of exudate, glucose level is low. LDH, lactate dehydrogenase enzymes, transudate low, exudate high. Same mechanism, cell lysis. In this whenever there is increased cell lysis, there is increased LDH enzymes. That's why in exudate, high amount of LDH. Then there is ratio of effusion LDH versus serous LDH. Transudate less than 0.6, exudate more than 0.6. Example of transudate, edema in case of congestive cardiac failures or edema in case of heart failures. Exudate, prurient edema like pus. So inflammatory edema. After classifications and difference between transudate and exudate, coming to pathogenesis of edema. Why edema develops? Which are various mechanisms that produce excessive accumulations of fluid within interstitial space as well as within serous cavity of body. So basically there are 6 mechanisms. These 6 mechanisms operates either singly or together. That means more than one mechanisms may be involved in certain conditions. Various mechanisms like decreased plasma oncotic pressure, increased capillary hydrostatic pressure, then there is lymphatic obstructions, certain tissue factors, increased capillary permeability and excessive sodium and water retentions. So these are 6 mechanisms that are responsible either singly or together for development of edema. Coming one by one, decrease plasma oncotic pressures. This one is normal phenomena, diagrammatic pictures, capillary, arterial end of capillary and here venous end of capillary. So two kind of forces as we previously mentioned. One is hydrostatic pressures. So at arterial end hydrostatic pressure is greater, 35 millimeters. Oncotic pressures remain same whether it is arterial end or venous end. It is usually 25 millimeters in both arterial and venous ends. As the capillary progress to venous ends, hydrostatic pressure decrease. So at venous end, hydrostatic pressure is 17 millimeters. So usually in normal physiological conditions, some fluids causes exit from intravascular into extravascular phase at the arterial ends, while some amount of fluids comes back into vascular phases at the venous ends. That's why balance is maintained. What happens whenever there is decreased plasma oncotic pressures? Usually causes hypoproteinemia of less than 5 gram per deciliter. This oncotic pressures is due to proteins, especially due to albumins. So whenever there is hypoproteinemia or you can say hypoalbuminemia, there is low plasma oncotic pressures. This lowers the plasma oncotic pressures so that it can no longer counteract the effect of hydrostatic pressures of blood. That's why here increase outward movement of fluid from the capillary walls and decrease inward movements from the interstitial phase. That's why edema develops. Extracellular phase, interstitial phase, intravascular phase. More amount of fluid comes from vessel into interstitial phase. Less amount of fluid goes back into vessels. That's why edema develops in case of decrease in plasma oncotic pressures. Hypoproteinemia usually produce anasarca. That means here there is generalized edema. As the albumin has 4 times higher plasma oncotic pressures than that of globulins, thus it is mainly hypoalbuminemia that generally result in edema. Examples of edema due to reduction in plasma oncotic pressures like edema of renal disease in nephrotic and nephritic syndromes. So here in nephrotic syndromes there is heavy proteinuria, that means loss of proteins in urine. That's why there is hypoproteinemia. And due to hypoproteinemia, edema develops. Liver cirrhosis, there is multiple mechanisms for edema development. One mechanism is due to low amount of protein productions by liver. As liver is major metabolic sites and it has greater role in development or productions of proteins. So whenever there is reductions in liver functions, especially in liver cirrhosis, there is less amount of protein produced, resulting in hypoproteinemia. Then there is edema due to other causes of hypoproteinemia like protein losing enteropathy, so excessive loss of proteins from GI tracts. Second mechanism, increased capillary hydrostatic pressures. When the hydrostatic pressure at the venular end of capillary rise to a level more than the plasma oncotic pressures, minimal or no reabsorptions of fluid, that's why edema develops. So here reabsorptions of fluid reduce, that's why edema develops. Examples, edema of cardiac disease in case of congestive cardiac failure or constrictive pericarditis. Liver cirrhosis, as I told you, multiple mechanisms. So in liver cirrhosis, there is development of ascites. This ascites develop due to portal hypertension. So there is increased pressures in portal veins and back pressure changes result in development of ascites due to increased hydrostatic pressures in capillaries within GI tracts. Passive congestions of various organs, mechanical obstructions due to thrombosis of veins of rats or pressure by pregnant uterus or tumors. There is development of edema due to increased hydrostatic pressure of blood. Sometimes postural edema develops, that is transient edema of feet in persons who stands for a long times. Here also increase hydrostatic pressures. Third mechanism is lymphatic obstructions. So here within vessels normal hydrostatic pressure, normal oncotic pressures, tissue factors is also absent, but main fault is lymphatic obstruction. So lymphatic outflow obstructions occurs. In normal physiological conditions, the interstitial fluid in the tissue places escapes by the way of lymphatics. So normally fluids from here goes into lymphatics. Obstructions to the outflow of these channels causes localized edema known as lymphoedema. Obstructions of lymphatics, accumulations of lymphatic fluid in tissue known as lymphoedema. Examples of lymphoedema: removal of axillary lymph nodes. So metastatic lymph nodes from axilla is removed in case of carcinoma breast. Radical mastectomy or modified radical mastectomy, there is removal of axillary lymph nodes, and lymphedema develops to the affected arms. Pressure from outsides on the main abdominal or thoracic lymphatic ducts by tumors or effusions also produce lymphedema. Sometimes when the main lymphatic channels ruptures and chyle, that means content of lymphatic vessels, that is known as chyles, is discharged into pleural cavity, that is known as chylothorax, or if it discharged into peritoneal cavity, it is called chylous ascites. Removal of axillary lymph nodes resulting in lymphedema of affected arms. This is typically non-pitting edema. Other example of lymphedema: in filariasis, there is inflammations of lymphatic vessels, and due to inflammations there is narrowing of lymphatics. Due to narrowing, chronic lymphedema of scrotum and rects occurs, that is known as elephantiasis. Elephant-like rects. Occlusion of lymphatic channels by malignant cells, and certain genetic conditions like Miller's disease or congenital lymphedema due to abnormal development of lymphatic channels, where edema is confined to one or both rects. Elephant-like rects in case of filariasis. Lymphatic obstructions due to inflammations of lymphatics in case of filariasis leading to huge enlargement of affected rects, that is called elephantiasis. Fourth factor is tissue factors. So here within blood vessels normal hydrostatic pressure, normal oncotic pressures, no lymphatic obstructions, but certain tissue factors. In some situations, tissue factors like increase oncotic pressures of interstitial space, increase oncotic pressures. If oncotic pressure increase, more fluid comes from vessels into outside. Or second mechanism is decrease tissue tensions or tissue hydrostatic pressure is reduced. So if hydrostatic pressure reduced, then here there is more amount of fluid comes from vessels into outside, and there is development of edema. Decreased tissue tensions or increased oncotic pressures usually occurs with other mechanisms. Examples of tissue factors for edema: elevations of oncotic pressures of interstitial fluid occurs due to increased vascular permeability and inadequate removal of proteins by lymphatics. So here other factors are increased vascular permeability due to inflammations or inadequate removal of proteins by lymphatics. Lower tissue tensions, as in case of root connective tissue of subcutaneous tissue, eyelids. Fifth factor, increased capillary permeability. The capillary permeability to plasma protein increases due to gaps between the endothelial cells when the endothelium is injured by capillary poisons. Causes reduced plasma oncotic pressures and elevated oncotic pressures in interstitial fluid. That's why there is development of edema. So whenever there is, normally this capillary is semi-permeable. That means it causes only permeability to waters and crystalloid materials. But colloid materials, this oncotic pressure is due to colloid materials, that is plasma proteins. And these semi-permeable membranes, endothelial membranes, usually doesn't allow plasma protein to go outside the vessels. But if there is gaps between these endothelial cells, so these semi-permeable membranes become permeable to plasma proteins. Plasma proteins comes from vessels into outsides. So here oncotic pressures within tissue increase, and due to increased oncotic pressures, more fluid comes within vessels into outside. Examples: increased capillary permeability, localized edema such as inflammatory edema by infections, insect bites, allergic reactions due to irritant drugs. Generally here edema fluid is exudate in nasals because high protein contents of edema fluids, that's why exudate in nasals. Then there is angioneurotic edema. This occurs due to allergic conditions or neurological factors. Is an acute attack of edema occurring on face, trunk, ribs, larynx, pharynx and lungs. Generalized edema due to increased vascular permeability occurs due to systemic infections, certain poisons, certain drugs, chemicals and anaphylactic reactions. This is hypersensitivity acute reactions, type 1 hypersensitivity reactions. Last and sixth mechanism, sodium and water retentions. The retained sodium and water causes expansions of intravascular fluid volumes. That's why it causes increased hydrostatic pressures, and due to increased hydrostatic pressure there is edema. Then there is excessive salt intakes with reduced renal functions. So whenever renal functions reduce, and along with these factors, if excessive salt intakes, there is retentions of sodiums. Along with sodium retentions, there is also retentions of waters. Increased tubular reabsorptions of sodiums in case of renal hypoperfusion. Also this occurs whenever there is increased renin-angiotensin-aldosterone secretions. Examples: increased salt and water retentions, edema of cardiac disease, liver cirrhosis. So in liver cirrhosis, third mechanism is salt and water retentions. One is hypoproteinemia, then there is increased hydrostatic pressures, and the third mechanism is retentions of sodium and water. This sodium and water retention in case of cirrhosis occurs due to there is excessive secretions or excessive productions of NO, nitric oxide. This nitric oxide causes vasodilatations, and due to vasodilatations there is activations of renin-angiotensin systems along with excessive secretions of aldosterone, and this all causes salt and water retentions from kidney. Edema of renal disease, nephrotic syndromes or glomerulonephritis. After general mechanisms or pathogenesis of edema, coming to special type of edema: cardiac edema, pulmonary, renal and cerebral edema. Coming to cardiac edema, common causes for cardiac edema is right ventricular failures and congestive cardiac failures. Here usually generalized edema occurs. In case of left ventricular failures, there is occurrence of pulmonary edema. So right ventricular failures there is cardiac edema, while left ventricular failures there is pulmonary edema. We will see later on about pulmonary edema. Here various mechanisms involved in pathogenesis of cardiac edema. One is reduced cardiac output. So in CCF as well as right ventricular failure there is reductions of cardiac output. This causes hypovolemia, less amount of blood in blood vessels. Stimulations of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone mechanisms plus increased ADS, antidiuretic hormone secretions. This all causes sodium and water retentions and edema development. So vicious cycles occurs. Second mechanisms of cardiac edema due to congestive heart failures, there is raised central venous pressures. And due to increased central venous pressures, these pressures transmit backwards to the venous end of capillaries. In turn, it raises the capillary hydrostatic pressures. So transjudative nasals of fluid occurs that is known as back pressure hypothesis. So here in cardiac edema, one mechanism is sodium and water retention, second is increased capillary hydrostatic pressures, third mechanisms chronic hypoxia causes injury to capillary walls. Due to reductions in cardiac output, there is chronic hypoxia. So capillary wall injury, increased capillary permeability, and there is occurrence of edema. This mechanism is known as forward pressure hypothesis. So here, due to increased capillary permeability, edema occurs. Usually whenever there is increased capillary permeability, this edema is exudative in nature. While in case of cardiac edema, edema is a transudate in nature. So this mechanism is poorly understood. That means this theory lacks support. Pathogenesis, three types of mechanisms as we already discussed: increased venous pressures, increased capillary hydrostatic pressures. This one is back pressure hypothesis. Chronic hypoxia, increased capillary permeability due to damage of endothelial wall of capillary due to hypoxia. Forward pressure hypothesis. And main here one is decreased cardiac output. Hypovolemia, extrarenal, intrarenal mechanisms, then in angiotensin system, activations, aldosterone secretions, and antidiuretic hormone secretions. All these causes sodium and water retention and cardiac edema. Specific characteristic of cardiac edema is influenced by gravity. That means it is characteristically dependent edema. If patient is ambulatory, it appears on the lower limbs, while in bedridden patients, edema appears on the sacral and genital areas. So dependent edema, dependent part of body first involved by accumulations of edema fluids. The accumulations of fluid may also occur in serous cavity. So here also development of pleural pericardial and ascites. After cardiac edema, coming to pulmonary edema. In acute pulmonary edema, the fluid accumulates not only in the tissue spaces but in the pulmonary alveoli as well. So this one is difference. Here in pulmonary edema, along with interstitial edema, that means accumulations of fluid in interstitial space, here also accumulations of fluid within air spaces or alveolar spaces. Normal physiological conditions, the capillary hydrostatic pressures average 10 millimeters of mercury and plasma oncotic pressure is adequate to prevent the fluid from escaping into interstitial space. So lungs are free from edema. So in normal physiological conditions, lungs tissue or air spaces are free from edema. Because here in lung tissue, this hydrostatic pressure is lower than our systemic circulations. In this lowering of hydrostatic pressures, reduce escape of fluid from intravascular into extravascular spaces. Oncotic pressure remains same whether it is systemic circulations or it is pulmonary circulations. This difference causes normally lungs are free from edematous fluid. Pathogenesis of pulmonary edema development. One is elevations in pulmonary hydrostatic pressures, that is called hemodynamic edema. Second is increased capillary permeability, that is called irritants edema. And third one is occurs sometimes at acute high altitudes, that is called acute high altitude edema. Elevations in pulmonary hydrostatic pressures in left heart failures. As I told you, in left heart failures, increased pressures in pulmonary capillaries. So in left heart failure, there is backward pressure changes from left ventricles. Backward pressure changes, that means increased pressures in left atrium, and from left atrium there is increased pressures in pulmonary veins, and this goes backwards to pulmonary capillaries. Imbalance between pulmonary hydrostatic pressure and plasma oncotic pressures. Hydrostatic pressures increase, oncotic pressures normal. Excessive fluid moves out of capillaries into lung interstitiums. Accumulations of fluid in lung interstitiums. Usually whenever there is mild increase in hydrostatic pressures, this edema fluid cleared by lymphatic, small artery and veins. But when these hydrostatic pressures increase very high, tenfold rising fluid amounts, the capacity of lymphatics to drain fluid is exceeded. That's why there is excess fluid starts accumulating into interstitium. So initially interstitial edema, thickening of alveolar walls. If this high pressure persists, then the high pressures of interstitial edema plus prolonged elevations of hydrostatic pressures causes accumulations of fluids within alveolar spaces, resulting in alveolar edema. And whenever there is edema within air spaces, there is hampering of lung function. Examples of pulmonary edema, or you can say etiology for pulmonary edema. Commonest left ventricular failures, then mitral stenosis, pulmonary vein obstructions, thyrotoxicosis, cardiac surgery, nephrotic syndromes, obstructions of lymphatic outflow by tumor or inflammations. Second mechanisms, increase vascular permeability resulting in irritant edema. Vascular endotheliums plus alveolar epithelial cells when damaged. Both increase permeability within endothelial cells plus there is damage of alveolar lining cells. There is increased vascular permeability, excess fluids and plasma proteins leaks out, and initially into interstitium there is edema, but further if this condition persists, there is edema within air spaces. Examples: pulmonary and extrapulmonary infections, shock, aspirations, inhalations of toxic substance, radiation injury and acute respiratory distress syndromes. Third patient type of pulmonary edema, this occurs in high altitudes. So acute high altitude edema at altitude greater than 2500 meters without acclimatizations. That means sudden high altitude shift resulting in anoxic damage to pulmonary vessels. So here pulmonary edema along with congestions and minute hemorrhage, this can cause death within few days. So severe conditions, but this can be prevented by acclimatization. That means rather than sudden transfer to high altitude, if we acclimatize patients, then there is less chances of development of pulmonary edema. Morphological changes in case of pulmonary edema, the fluid accumulates more in the basal regions of lungs due to gravity. On X-ray or radiological examinations, there is colorless lines. So on X-ray, there are three types of colorless line: A, B, and C. In case of pulmonary edema, there is color B type of lines. That means appearance of thickened interlobular septa with dilated lymphatics as a linear lines perpendicular to the pleura. Gross examinations of specimens in case of pulmonary edema, lungs are heavy, moist and subcrepitance. On cut surface, it exudes frothy fluids because here presence of air along with fluid. That's why frothy fluids, which is a mixture of air and fluid. On microscopic examinations of tissue, the alveolar capillary are congested. Interstitial space along with alveolar space contains eosinophilic granular pink proteinous materials mixed with some RBC and macrophages. Diagrammatic microscopic pictures of pulmonary edema: congested blood vessels in alveolar septa, thickened alveolar septa due to interstitial edema, and accumulations of edematous fluid within air spaces. Pink pale homogeneous granular fluids within air spaces. Few RBC may be present. So whenever there is congestion of blood vessels, there is presence of few amount of RBC within alveolar spaces. Actual microscopic pictures: septa is thickened, edematous fluid in septa, congested blood vessels within septa, and there is fluid within air spaces. pink granular eosinophilic fluids within airpaces and within alveolar septa. Coming to renal edema, generalized edema occurs in certain renal diseases like nephrotic syndromes, and acute tubular injury. Edema in case of nephrotic syndromes, main mechanisms here is due to excessive protein loss in urine, there is hypoalbuminemia, decreased plasma oncotic pressures, and this causes generalized edema. So main mechanism in nephrotic syndromes is reductions in plasma oncotic pressures. Whenever there is hypoalbuminemia, there is also fall in plasma volumes. This activates renin, angiotensin, aldosterone mechanisms. So sodium and water retention also occurs. So minor mechanisms in nephrotic syndrome is sodium and water retentions. Coming to nephritic syndromes, edema due to nephritic syndromes. Here there is excessive tubular reabsorption of sodium and waters via renin, angiotensin, aldosterone mechanisms leading to edema. So main mechanism in nephritic syndromes is sodium and water retentions, while in nephrotic syndromes main mechanisms is hypoproteinemia. Difference between nephrotic and nephritic edema cause nephrotic syndromes, right, due to glomerulonephritis, especially acute glomerulonephritis and rapidly progressive glomerulonephritis. Proteinuria in nephrotic edema heavy, nephritic edema mild to moderate. Protein contents high, here low. Mechanisms, as I told you, main mechanism is hypoproteinemia, main mechanism here is salt and water retentions. Degree of edema in nephrotic syndromes severe along with generalized, while here nephrotic edema, mild edema and localized edema. Distributions of edema, subcutaneous tissue as well as visceral organs. In case of nephrotic edema, loose connective tissue, face, eyes, ankles and genitalia. Third mechanisms in renal edema, one is nephrotic syndrome, second one is nephrotic syndrome, third one is acute tubular injury. The damaged tubules either due to shock or toxins, thus the capacity of selective reabsorptions and concentrations of glomerular filtrate. That's why here excessive retentions of water and electrolytes and consequent oliguria. Along with due to retentions of water and sodiums, there is development of edema. Last one is cerebral edema. As brain has no draining lymphatics, fluid and electrolyte exchange is performed by blood-brain barriers at the endothelial cells of capillaries. Three types of mechanisms for development of cerebral edema. One is pathogenic mechanisms, cytotoxic mechanism and interstitial mechanisms. Pathogenic mechanisms, most common type, result from increased filtration pressures or increased capillary permeability. It is important around contusions, infarcts, brain abscess and some tumors. So etiology here is contusions, infarcts, brain abscess and some tumors. Gross examinations, white matter is swollen, soft with flattened gyri and narrowed sulci. Cut sections soft and gelatinous. On microscopic examinations, tissue elements are separated by edema fluids. There is swelling of astrocytes. Perivascular space is widened and there is clear yellow around small blood vessels. Cytotoxic mechanisms for cerebral edema, the blood-brain barrier is intact. So here there is increased capillary permeability. That means blood-brain barrier is not intact in case of pathogenic mechanism. In cytotoxic mechanism, this blood-brain barrier is intact. Fluid accumulation is intracellular. Second difference. In vasogenic, fluid accumulation is extracellular along with also accumulations of within intracellular, that is within astrocytes. But here especially fluid accumulate within cells. Result from disturbance in cellular osmoregulations. Age occur in some metabolic derangement, acute hypoxia and with some toxic chemicals. Microscopically, cells are swollen and vacuolated. Third mechanism, interstitial mechanisms, occurs when excessive fluid crosses the ependymal linings of ventricles and accumulates in periventricular white matter. So here periventricular edema. By these mechanisms, edema occurs in case of non-communicating hydrocephalus. Thank you.